Before the Amazon became the largest rainforest on Earth, this place was once an entirely different world. There was only an ancient superlake stretching across South America, and then one day, its disappearance transformed the climate, the landscape, and the history of life across an entire continent. This is the story of the birth of the Amazon. Around 20 million years ago, if you stood where the heart of the Amazon rainforest lies today, the world before your eyes would have been completely different, with water stretching to the horizon. Vast wetlands connecting enormous lakes, and winding channels threading through immense flooded landscapes. The Amazon we know today did not yet exist. The story began like a geological investigation filled with mystery. For many years, paleontologists repeatedly uncovered traces buried deep beneath the Amazon that seemed impossible to explain. Thousands of kilometers from the coastline, they found sediment layers that had formed underwater. Mixed within them were countless brackish water shells and fossils of organisms that lived in environments between freshwater and seawater. This raised a major question. Why, in the middle of the largest tropical rainforest on Earth, were there signs of an ancient aquatic world? At first, many hypotheses were proposed, and some researchers believed these were simply remnants of ancient rivers. Others suggested that seawater had repeatedly penetrated deep into the South American continent. But as more evidence accumulated, fossil pollen revealed that most plants from that period were swamp vegetation and species adapted to waterlogged environments. When these individual clues were assembled, they revealed the existence of a vast ecosystem known as the Pebas megawetland system. During the Miocene, Pebas was a network of swamps, lakes, wetlands, and waterways, covering approximately 1 million square kilometers, transforming much of western Amazonia into a continuous aquatic world that endured for millions of years. What made Pebas remarkable was that it was one of the most unique ecosystems ever to appear on Earth. Its environment constantly shifted between freshwater and brackish water due to ancient marine incursions combined with enormous volumes of water flowing from the continent's interior. Fossils show that this region was once home to ancient freshwater stingrays, giant catfish species, and many groups of animals related to creatures that inhabit the Amazon today. Notably, many modern Amazonian animals still carry evolutionary traces from the time of Pebas. Some freshwater fish lineages appear to have descended from ancestors that adapted to the brackish water conditions of this ancient ecosystem. The deeper scientists investigate, the more they realize that the Amazon was born from water. Beneath the Amazon lies the memory of a world that has vanished. A system of lakes and wetlands covering nearly 1 million square kilometers could not have appeared out of nowhere. What created that immense cradle? The answer begins thousands of kilometers to the west, where one of the greatest geological events in the history of our planet was unfolding: the rise of the Andes Mountains. Around 23 to 21 million years ago, During the early Miocene, the Nazca tectonic plate beneath the Pacific Ocean continued to plunge beneath the South American continent. Yet when accumulated over millions of years, the result was a geological wall stretching more than 7,000 kilometers, one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, beginning to shape the destiny of an entire continent. Before the Andes experienced their major uplift, much of northern South America was a low and relatively flat landscape. Water from numerous ancient river systems could flow in different directions, with some moving westward. As the Andes rose, they acted like a colossal dam built by Earth itself. Waterways became blocked, and thousands of rivers lost their natural outlets. Water began to accumulate. At first, there were only flooded depressions, then large lakes, and eventually interconnected lakes forming a vast network. Over millions of years, the entire western Amazon region transformed into a giant basin filled with water. This was the moment when the Pebas mega-wetland system was born. Geological studies suggest that this system may have covered approximately 1 million square kilometers, nearly the size of modern-day Egypt. Some areas were more than 50 meters deep. Remarkably, the Andes did more than create the space for Pebas to exist. They also supplied the resources that sustained the entire ecosystem. As the young mountains continued to be eroded by rain and wind, enormous quantities of mineral-rich sediment were carried into the lowlands below. These nutrients nourished countless aquatic plants, algae, and microorganisms. The food web began to expand at an extraordinary rate. Ancient fish populations flourished in the sediment-rich waters. Mollusks spread across lake bottoms, while swamp forests grew along the shorelines, creating shelter for countless forms of life. Mollusks spread across lake bottoms, while swamp forests grew along the shorelines, creating shelter for countless forms of life. But this transformation did not always bring benefits. As the Andes continued to rise, they began to influence the regional climate. Moist air masses from the Atlantic Ocean were forced upward when they encountered the mountains, generating enormous amounts of rainfall across the eastern regions. At the same time, increasingly complex terrain caused waterways to shift continuously, and all of South America entered a period of geographic restructuring on a continental scale. And in the millions of years that followed, as the global climate entered a particularly warm chapter in Earth's history, Pebas would become far more than a vast wetland. It would become the largest tropical paradise on the planet, a colossal biological engine that produced giants unlike anything ever seen in the history of the Amazon. Around 17 to 14 million years ago, Earth entered a period that paleoclimatologists call the Middle Miocene climatic optimum. Evidence from ocean sediment cores, oxygen isotopes preserved in fossils, and paleoclimate studies indicates that global average temperatures were approximately 3 to 4 degrees Celsius higher than they are today. Atmospheric CO2 concentrations fluctuated between roughly 400 and 500 ppm, or even higher at certain times. The Arctic was nearly free of permanent ice compared to today. Global sea levels were significantly higher, And in the Pebas region, these conditions created an environment that was almost perfect for an explosion of life. Under warm climatic conditions that persisted for millions of years, vegetation expanded at an extraordinary rate. Fossil pollen reveals that many areas were covered by palms, swamp plants, and dense flooded forests. Biomass increased continuously, creating an almost endless food supply for herbivorous and omnivorous animals. As food became abundant, populations grew rapidly. And when prey appeared everywhere, predators began to flourish as well. Many modern Amazonian fish lineages, including the ancient ancestors of catfish and freshwater stingrays, thrived in this environment. The vast waterways allowed fish species to increase in size and diversify in form. Meanwhile, mollusks multiplied in enormous numbers, leaving behind thick fossil deposits that scientists continue to excavate today. The abundance of energy did not simply sustain countless small organisms. It accumulated across multiple biological levels, making the emergence of giant apex predators possible. Every year, millions of tons of organic material were produced and then decomposed within the wetlands. Nutrients were continuously recycled. The entire system functioned almost like a vast closed-loop cycle. That is why paleontologists often describe Pebas as an evolutionary hotspot. Not simply because it contained many species, but because it created ecological opportunities unlike anything seen before. Some species began adapting to hunt fish in deep waterways. Others specialized in exploiting small organisms in shallow waters. Still others evolved increasingly larger body sizes to gain advantages in the competition for food. Every paradise has its own rulers, and within the murky waters of Pebas, where food was more abundant than anywhere else in South America, the largest predators in the continent's history were preparing to appear. The water lies still. Giant palms reflect across the surface of the lake. Beneath those murky waters exists an entirely different world, the domain of Purosaurus, the most terrifying predator ever to rule the Amazon. Purosaurus was a giant caiman, a distant relative of modern crocodiles and caimans. Fossil skulls measuring more than 1.4 meters in length, discovered in Peru, Brazil, and Colombia, suggest that this animal could reach lengths of 10 to 15 meters and weigh more than 10 to 12 tons. What astonishes scientists is not only its size, but also its power. Biomechanical studies estimate that the bite force of Purosaurus may have reached approximately 69,000 newtons. Within the waters of Pebas, Purosaurus was virtually unrivaled. Fossil tooth marks found on the shells of ancient turtles and on the bones of other animals indicate that it truly was the undisputed ruler of this ecosystem. While Purosaurus filled the role of a super predator, the ancient rivers and lakes were also inhabited by Gryposuchus, a giant long-snouted crocodilian that exceeded 10 meters in length. If Purosaurus was like an armored tank, Gryposuchus was like a living spear. Its long, narrow snout resembled that of the modern gharial of South Asia and was designed for catching fish in deep waters. Yet perhaps the strangest creature in this world was Morasuchus. When scientists first examined its fossil skull, many believed they were looking at a deformed animal. Its unusually wide, flattened, and elongated snout resembled a giant shovel more than the jaws of a crocodilian. Today, most researchers believe that Morasuchus did not hunt in the conventional way. Instead, it may have used its broad jaws to scoop or filter small animals, small fish and invertebrates from shallow waters. This was the moment that made paleontologists realize just how extraordinary Pebus truly was. In Pebus, energy was so abundant that multiple groups of giant predators could coexist for millions of years. And at the very top of the food chain, Purosaurus waited silently in the darkness. But even Purosaurus was not the only giant inhabiting this aquatic world. The deeper paleontologists excavate the ancient sediment layers of the Amazon. The more they realize that the waters of Pebus were home to far more than giant predators. One of the most astonishing discoveries emerged from Venezuela, Colombia, and northern Brazil. At first, researchers found only enormous fragments of fossilized shell buried within ancient mud deposits. But when those pieces were assembled, they realized they were facing the largest freshwater turtle ever known, Stupendomys geographicus. This was not a large turtle by ordinary standards. The shell of Stupendomys could reach a length of 2.86 meters, nearly the size of a small car. Its body mass is estimated to have exceeded 1 ton. Within the waters of Pebus, Stupendomys move slowly through vast wetlands and waterways, feeding on aquatic vegetation and taking advantage of the ecosystem's abundant resources. But scientists later uncovered a startling detail. Many fossil shells bear enormous punctures and bite marks that perfectly match the teeth of Purosaurus. This is direct evidence that encounters between the largest freshwater turtle in history and the largest crocodilian in history truly occurred. The surprises beneath the water did not end there. In 2024, scientists announced a new discovery from the Peruvian Amazon: the fossil of a giant ancient river dolphin named Pebonista yacoruna. This dolphin lived approximately 16 million years ago and has been identified as the largest river dolphin ever known. Based on its skull, which measured nearly 1 meter in length, along with comparative anatomical models, Pebonista is believed to have been about 35% larger than the modern Amazon River dolphin. What makes Pebonista especially fascinating is that its closest relatives were not the river dolphins living in the Amazon today. Instead, it was more closely related to river dolphin species that once inhabited South Asia. This reveals a far more complex evolutionary history. Once again, Pebus demonstrates that it was not an ordinary lake system. It was a crossroads where multiple evolutionary lineages converged. And perhaps most remarkable of all is that none of these creatures appeared by chance. Along those vast shorelines, another world was thriving as well, a world where giant predators ran across the land. Around 15 million years ago, the prehistoric Amazon was one of the strangest terrestrial ecosystems ever to exist in the history of South America. As paleontologists examined fossils unearthed in Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil, they realized that Pebas was also a biological engine that produced giant creatures not only beneath the water, but on land as well. Global temperatures during the Middle Miocene were approximately 3 to 4 degrees Celsius higher than they are today. Vegetation expanded at an explosive rate, and wherever food becomes abundant, giant animals emerge. One of the most formidable predators on land was Baranasuchus, reaching lengths of approximately 7.5 to nearly 10 meters. Its long and powerful limbs allowed it to move efficiently across land. It was a true hunting machine, capable of pursuing large animals through forests bordering the wetlands. Across the plains and open woodlands of South America lived a group of creatures that seemed almost as though they had stepped out of science fiction, the terror birds. Some species in this group stood more than 2.5 meters tall and weighed hundreds of kilograms, armed with sharp, hooked beaks shaped like axes. For tens of millions of years after the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs, South America remained isolated from the other continents. Yet what truly made Pebas different was the enormous abundance of herbivorous animals that sustained the entire ecosystem. One of the most famous examples was Phobaramus, the largest rodent ever known. Based on fossils discovered in Venezuela, Phobaramus may have weighed several hundred kilograms and, according to some early estimates, approached 700 kilograms. Beyond that, many ancient relatives of ground sloths were also thriving across South America. Some giant sloth species that appeared during later periods of the continent's history could reach masses of several tons. Their ancestors had emerged much earlier within fertile environments such as Pebas. And this is the answer to the mystery of Pebas. Why did it produce so many giant creatures? Giant animals depended entirely upon environmental stability. Into the west, the Andes continued to rise meter by meter. The magnificent world of Pebas was about to face the greatest challenge in its history. The most frightening aspect of Pebas's downfall is that its end did not begin with an asteroid impact or a massive volcanic eruption. The catastrophe arrived so slowly that no living creature could have recognized it. The collision between the Nazca Plate and the South American Plate did not stop after Pebas was formed. Geological studies show that much of the central and northern Andes continued to rise dramatically throughout the Miocene. At first, nothing seemed unusual, yet the landscape was quietly changing. Areas that had once been connected bodies of water gradually became separated into isolated lakes. Waterways shifted course. Some channels began to dry out. Wetlands that had remained flooded year-round started experiencing longer periods of drought. The Pebas system, which had once functioned as a unified organism, slowly fragmented into smaller pieces. This was the moment when the giant ecosystem began to lose its connectivity. As habitats became divided, fish populations declined. Communities became isolated, and the exchange of genetic diversity weakened. As resources diminished, the giants were the first to suffer the consequences. The sediment layers record this period of decline with remarkable clarity. The composition of fossils changes through time. Vast stagnant water environments were replaced by increasingly dynamic river systems. For the prehistoric Amazon, it was an ecological crisis on the scale of an apocalypse. What makes this story especially remarkable is that the Andes had once served as a colossal barrier, trapping water within the South American basin and helping create the largest wetland system on the planet. Yet as the mountains continued to rise, that very barrier began to alter the slope of the entire continent. Then came the true climax. Scientists today realize that Peibas did not die because it lacked water. It died because the water began to move. Instead of remaining trapped within vast lakes and wetlands, the enormous volume of water across the basin started reorganizing into increasingly powerful river systems. Yet the collapse of Peibas was preparing the way for something even greater. It paved the road for the emergence of an entirely new system. This was the moment when the modern Amazon began to take shape from the ashes of a lost world. Around 10 to 7 million years ago, one of the most important geological events in the history of South America began to unfold. Previously, most of the water within the Amazon basin had been trapped inside the Peibas Basin. But as the Andes continued to rise, enormous quantities of sediment carried from the mountains began filling the ancient lakes. At the same time, changes in the landscape created a new eastward slope. This detail was critically important. Geological studies and sediment analyses from the Atlantic offshore region indicate that by the end of the Miocene, a transcontinental drainage system had formed, connecting the Andes to the eastern coast of South America. This was the true turning point. For most of its history, South America did not possess a modern Amazon River. Many scientists describe this event as the greatest river reversal in the continent's history. Before the Andes rose, many ancient river systems tended to flow westward or remain trapped within inland basins. But now, water began traveling thousands of kilometers from the foothills of the Andes to the Atlantic Ocean. Fish, aquatic animals, and aquatic plants began moving across distances never before possible. This new connectivity triggered another evolutionary explosion. Many modern Amazonian freshwater fish groups, including the ancestors of catfish, characins, and countless other species, gained the opportunity to expand throughout the entire basin. At the same time, The emergence of a transcontinental river completely transformed the chemistry of the environment. Pebas had once been a freshwater system mixed with brackish influences that appeared periodically through marine incursions. Organisms dependent on the ancient wetland environment gradually disappeared, while species adapted to river ecosystems began to thrive. What is truly remarkable is that the modern Amazon did not appear in a single moment. It was the result of millions of years of geographic, climatic, and biological restructuring. The transformation of the Pebas megalake into the Amazon was driven by the combined forces of plate tectonics, the uplift of the Andes, billions of tons of sediment, and the persistent power of water acting over millions of years. It transformed into something far greater. The early Amazon River, the new lifeblood of South America, followed by the emergence of the largest tropical rainforest on Earth. When the Pebas system disappeared, many might assume that the Amazon entered a period of decline. The reality was exactly the opposite. Modern studies show that even today, the Amazon River transports hundreds of millions of tons of sediment into the Atlantic Ocean each year. In the past, when the new river system was first taking shape, the volume of transported material was even greater. Gradually, vast floodplains emerged along the new rivers, and the soil became increasingly fertile. Flowering plants began expanding their range. Flooded forests developed first, followed by taller forests as the land became more stable. Millions of young trees sprouted, died, and were replaced by new generations. Over time, the open spaces disappeared. Tree canopies connected into continuous green vaults stretching all the way to the horizon. This was the true turning point. From the forest floor to the understory, to the tree trunks, and finally to the canopy towering dozens of meters above the ground, each level became a world of its own. A forest was no longer simply a collection of trees. It became a three-dimensional biological city. Then, an astonishing chain reaction began to unfold. Trees generated moisture through transpiration. Water vapor condensed into clouds. Clouds produced rain. Rain, in turn, nourished more trees. Modern scientists refer to this as a biological feedback loop. The Amazon did not merely survive because of the climate. The explosion of plant life triggered an unprecedented explosion of animal life. Insects diversified at remarkable speed to exploit leaves, flowers, and fruits. Birds appeared throughout every layer of the forest. Early primates began adapting to life in the trees. Bats, rodents, carnivorous mammals, and countless other creatures evolved to take advantage of new opportunities. Remarkably, much of the biodiversity found in the Amazon today can trace its origins back to this period of environmental restructuring after the disappearance of Pebas. A forest covering approximately 7 million square kilometers. A home to roughly 10% of all known species on Earth. The Amazon did not simply replace Pebas. The Amazon is the rebirth of Pebas in an entirely new form. The Amazon of today was not born from forests. It was born from a vast aquatic world that vanished. From the collapse of an ancient world, the largest rainforest on the planet began to emerge. The story of the Amazon is a reminder that Earth is constantly changing. Worlds that seem eternal can disappear. And sometimes, from the end of one era, one of the greatest wonders of our planet is born. Thank you for staying with WUFO Space until the very end of this journey through the vast universe. If you found this video interesting and insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WUFO Space so you won't miss our next cosmic adventures. Your support means the world to us and fuels our passion to keep exploring the wonders beyond.